The Glock 19 and its clones. Most of us are sick of them, but they exist for a reason. And which one is best? That's what we're going to take a look at coming up next on GBGuns. So this will all be broken down with better details, pricing, where to find them, all that kind of stuff, as usual over on our website, which YouTube won't let me tell you about. However, if you look at the pinned comment or you know the name of the channel, chances are you can find the website. So after recently doing a CZ75 comparison of 6 different CZ75 based guns, that was a lot of work, but I also had a lot of fun. And that got me thinking, what other groups do I have? Of course, the ubiquitous Glock 19, the Goldilocks size, the gun that's small enough to carry but big enough to enjoy on the range. Been around forever, lots of aftermarket, like this one. I think the frame is the only thing that's still stock on it. This is what I cut my teeth on and really getting into pistols. They're so simple and easy to work on. There's so many options for aftermarket parts. You can almost make anything you want out of the gun, and that's fun. That's why a lot of people got into Glocks and enjoy them. After the patent expired on the Gen 3s, a whole slew of clones came out. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 other models here. There was a 7th that I couldn't find, but I know I have somewhere, but it's okay. No one cared about that gun anyways. What I want to do is shoot them all side by side in a drill that I created when I did the CZ75 comparison and see what kind of thoughts and talking points I get from there. Now, keep in mind, the time on this is more to put pressure on me than it is an actual score of the gun. That pressure helps me identify and learn things as I'm racing to try to master the gun, some of which I haven't shot in quite some time. Let's take a look at that drill. From 7 yards back, we've got 2 different targets. On the left, you see the DA targets, this red thing here. That's actually a color changing target, which is pretty cool. It changes with heat. The heat of the bullet is going to make a yellow spot when I hit. When the buzzer goes off, I'm going to grab the gun from the barrel and do effectively a bill drill. Dump 6 rounds into it, get some real speed going. Then I'm going to transition over up here to this little 6-inch bullseye for a 5-shot group that ideally I'm going to try to do as quickly as I can while maintaining accuracy. And what is this going to tell us? The combination of those 2 tasks are going to force me to handle recoil control and mitigation as I burn through 6 rounds quickly while trying to be fairly accurate. Then I'm going to transition, see how quickly I can steady onto another target and use the sights on the gun to group well at speed, which is going to be another trigger factor. Now, these aren't the only reasons or things to think about when you're considering firearms, but it's somewhat of a fair test. There's lots of other features and things. Of course, we can discuss all of that in the article. This is really just the legwork to get me thinking about these guns again, and it's kind of fun, and I thought you guys might enjoy seeing it. So let's get into it. Oh my God, I just said it. Am I a YouTuber now? I said let's get into it. Cool, cue the nifty mood lighting and music. No, sorry, still GBGuns. All right. We of course have to start with the original, the Glock 19. Now, this particular Glock 19 is far from original. In fact, the frame is about the only thing that's still stock on it. I've talked about this before. I have a love-hate relationship with the Gen 3 Glock 19. Like many of you, I bought one because I had heard of it, and it's what the guy at the gun shop recommended. And like many of you, I quickly found there were some things that I just didn't, as I was still learning to handgun, there were things that I felt like the gun was holding me back on. It was 100% reliable, but some stuff just wasn't quite right. And so this being over a decade ago, I dumped a lot of money into this gun, more in parts than what the gun was worth before finally moving on. I don't have the stock parts anymore, so our example here is not pure. This is an L2D combat slide. I forget who made the barrel. Got an L2D combat fluted steel guide rod in there. Taller sights to make it co-witness with an optic, with a red fiber optic. I've got some goon tape type stuff on the right side here because I did find the Glock 19 to be slippery in competition and courses, because I did use this quite a bit back then. And I believe it's a Ranger Proof Arms trigger in here. Oop, that was quicker and lighter than I expected. Got a light take up to a wall, light roll through brake. Of course, that Glock signature reset. And then the biggest one for me, and it was part of what moved me away from the Glock 19, but a part that saved it, was this magwell. This is also from L2D Combat. Not that I needed any help reloading. Reloading is pretty easy when you've got a single feed double stack magazine, but you see how it keeps my pinky out of the way from getting smashed. That was a big thing for me, because in competition and in courses, I'd be shoving in that mag on reload, and I'd inevitably pinch my pinky because it just didn't fit the Gen 3 Glock 19 frame. Additionally, the amount of space from the undercut to the first finger groove doesn't fit my finger, which pushes the rest of my fingers off, and I end up riding on the high spots of the finger grooves instead of in the grooves. So absolute worst case scenario. But it is our baseline, it's what everything's built around, and I figure most of you probably have tinkered with your Glock 19 anyways, so me having a tinkered one as the baseline should be fine. We will start, of course, with the Glock 19. Mine is far from stock, but I don't even know where the stock parts are. I bought this thing used over a decade ago. Starting from low ready. Any day now, buzzer. Five, two, one, grouped nicely. Everything A-zone on that target. You can see hopefully you saw the yellow marks. We'll pause to let that cool, and I'm going to reset the targets. Immediate thoughts. I remembered what I didn't like about this gun, and that is the finger grooves perfectly misalign for my hand. I end up with my fingers on the height of the grooves, so I've actually got kind of like a skinny, ribby gun to hold on to up front. The L2D Combat magwell that's on here is what has saved me from mag pinch and being able to control the gun, because it gives my pinky a spot to rest. Otherwise I would be floating. This trigger, I believe, is a Ranger-proof arms trigger. I don't know, but it did pretty well. There's a lot of other things modified in this gun, a steel guide rod. Obviously the slide is aftermarket and lightened and all of that kind of stuff. But did pretty well, and I've got to say, to memory, that's better than my best with the CZ75 group. All right, I'll reset and we'll do the next one. The Palmetto State Armory Dagger really brought down the price and is US made, which is kind of a nice thing about it. I have found in my comparison of slides that this window slide I actually perform better with. That weight reduction on the reciprocating part up above definitely helps with shooting. As far as the ergonomics, they are certainly different. Palmetto State Armory did not clone that at all. In fact, you'll notice I don't like to use the term clone on any of these, because I don't think they are a clone. A clone would be a one-for-one reproduction. These are based on the Glock pattern, but none of them are a Glock. There is some swell through the middle here that helps fill the palm. This grip angle feels kind of uncomfortable to me in hand, but on the range I have no trouble with it. As far as trigger, it is a hinge trigger. Some people complain about that. I've never had a problem with it. Spongy take up to a squishy wall. I mean, this is much more factory Glock-ish, but not a bad gun and very affordable. Let's see how it stacks up against the others on the range. PSA Dagger, this is with, I don't know which version of the slides, but the slightly windowed slide, and you may recall when I did a test and article on these, I actually performed better with this slide than I did with the original slide. So that's what I'm running from low ready. .570, a little bit slower, all still A-zone on our bill drill. Group was all right. What I felt and recalled there was the awkward ergonomics of this gun that don't feel comfortable, but the gun somehow still works in my hand. Very controllable. I was able to really push the gun because I had a good hold of the gun. The Bull Armory Axi Hatchet. Now this is the middle. They have 3 different trim levels. This is the mid one that is optics ready. We've got some weight reduction and traction enhancement on the slide. Zoom in a little bit more, I realized. And then the frame is just artwork. The radius underneath here, the radiusing along the trigger guard for those who like to rest the finger there, the double undercut angle that's underneath the trigger guard here, 3 rail slots, steel guide rod, optics ready on this particular model, and I grabbed this one because this is their newer frame texture that has a kind of sandpaper there on the sides, and on the front you've got blocks moving up that way, which resist the gun wanting to pivot in the hand, and on the back, same direction. I wish they were kind of going the other direction, but it's a very comfortable gun to hold. Even this radius here under the beaver tail makes for a nice shooting gun. As far as trigger, we've got a lighter take up to the wall and a pretty crisp break. It's not hammer fire, but you're not ever going to get that. Good feeling gun. Let's see how it compares to the rest on the range. Bolt Armory Axe C Hatchet. This is their latest setup with the newer grip setup on it. This thing was rock solid in my hands. I was perhaps overdriving the gun because I was expecting a little more slippage than I was feeling. Tighter grouping, though still a little bit low and left, on the torso. Group on the circle, still hit the circle. Loosest of the groups so far, but I was also really driving it. And a 4.48 time because it just wanted to run. Like this gun was just screaming for it. Like when you first hop in a sporty car and the first couple times you touch the pedal and you're used to your boring old slow grocery getter and the car is just begging to go. That's how the Tomahawk felt. Hatchet, sorry. Derya Arms DY9. This is a relatively new one to the channel. Coming out of Turkey, imported by Rock Island, and then sold in the US at an insanely low price. Incredibly affordable. Lots of stylistic changes. The one thing that I found was interesting was the front strap on this thing. Feels a bit like you're holding a 2x4. It's rather flat across the front of the front strap. Almost like what I imagine a Glock would feel like without finger grooves. Traction is okay. Ergonomics are decent. The sights are really big, and in our review of this, Tia referred to them as crayons because those are some fat fiber optic tubes. That made it a little bit difficult to group, but for defensive shooting, which is what the pistol's made for and what the drill is, that could be an advantage. Going over our trigger, weighted take up, and a very heavy push through brake. Not a wonderful trigger, but also not a terrible trigger. Does that extra weight make a difference? Is it going to hurt us on the range doing what guns are supposed to do? Let's find out. The Derya Arms DY9, most recently reviewed, shot this thing about a month ago. Interesting piece. I remember from then Tia calling the sights crayons because they're giant and super bright, and also that the trigger was a little bit heavy. Let's see how that works for this speed, since we didn't quite do a speed related test in that video. Group not as nice. I did not feel any reason to complain about the trigger this time. I was just punching through because this is a speed run. Hits on the torso, again airing low left. That's what you get for rushing. The group was okay, still hit, just not really stacking. Our speed though, 499. So you have to ask yourself, did those fat sights and being able to just punch the trigger allow me to run harder and faster, or am I just getting better at this drill? Lone Wolf Arms, Dusk 19. Lone Wolf spent roughly 20 years making aftermarket parts for Glocks for people who were looking to customize or improve the performance or tweak it in one way or another. So it no surprise that they finally have their own complete pistol. What's funny about this, or a little bit of irony, and sorry, I know this is going to upset the hardcore Glock folks, a company who spent 20 years making aftermarket Glock parts, their Glock clone, their Glock build, is probably the least Glock-like. So what does that tell you about the original? Anyways, the grip on this is quite different, very small in diameter. We have a very steep, nice undercut and rounded edges under the trigger guard, and that double undercut angle, if you will. Got a little bit of a thumb ledge for support hand. Nice lighter weight slide, and some night vision sights that are green front, blacked out rear, which is what I like. Very nice pistol that is pretty light compared to others, at least in handling. How's that going to impact things on the range? We'll find out. Lone Wolf Arms Dusk 19. This has a different grip. It's probably the most modernized, I guess you could say, of the ones so far. A little bit low impacts. That could be because I'm squeezing, as I tend to on smaller grips, but otherwise pretty good. 5.25 for a time. You know what's funny? Since all these have totally different triggers, I'm learning in the build drill how far I can push this trigger and how I can run the trigger. Very comfortable to shoot, very manageable, decent time, no complaints. The FMK 9C1 doesn't use Glock magazines. However, it is the earliest that I remember hearing of Glock-ish gun. It was a competitor that came out before the patents had expired, and so they did some things to try to make sure that they weren't going to get in trouble with Glock. This is the gun that I grabbed, which unfortunately is the wrong one. I have two of these things. This is an earlier one that was a freebie with front sight that has traditionally... I keep it around as a malfunction trainer because you will inevitably get one per magazine in this. The newer one that I have, which was a Gen 2, I believe, is flawless. It's great. That's what I meant to grab for the range. Unfortunately, I grabbed this old one, so my apologies to you guys and my apologies to FMK for what you're going to see there. But since I had it out there, I still ran it. Now, they do have a Gen 3. What all the differences, I don't know. I haven't seen or handled one of those yet. They were going to send one for review. It never arrived. The trigger on this older one is heavy, but a good crunch there. I mean, you definitely have a wall that you have to push through. It's an appropriate trigger for carry use. These aren't bad guns. I just happened to grab my my cursed one. The FMK, and I just realized, because I grabbed this when it was still a little bit dark in the Armory this morning, I have two of these things. I have one that has the newer 801 trigger. I have an older one that has the original trigger and was never 100% reliable. I grabbed the older one. So we may not complete here. I hope this doesn't misrepresent FMK. It's not my intent. They're now on to the Gen 3. I haven't shot a Gen 3 yet. They were going to send one for review. It never came. The Gen 2 is pretty good. This is, in my opinion, the first of the major, almost a Glock, but not quite, aside from, of course, the Smith & Wesson. This is very Glock 19 competitive or akin, but does not have a whole lot of parts interchange. Hope it runs. .837 with the two malfunctions there, and I flinched majorly, which is something you'll find yourself doing if you're rushing and pushing on the gun. My apologies to FMK for potentially misrepresenting by having a known bad gun and a known older design, but I don't have anything newer to show, and this is an akin thing. Wasn't that bad. The sights are tiny, itty bitty on here. They use a different sight kit. Lots of things were done differently to avoid angering Glock on these, because it was before it was okay to just run with them. But not terrible aside from those malfunctions. And another wild card that I tossed in was the Ermox Defense X-Fire, just because so many people have falsely called it a Glock clone that that's what people think it is. We have an aluminum frame, we have full-length slide rails. The only real built-in, for sure, Glock compatible parts are the magazine and the barrel. The rest of it is its own gun, but since so many people are thinking of it as like an aluminum frame Glock, I figured I'd include it. This is a neat pistol. Rolling changes have been made since I got mine, and I understand more changes will be coming. I did have an optic on it. Since it was already on there, I wasn't going to take it off, so this gun was run with an optic. You'll see in the video if that makes much of a difference. Also, this trigger, heavy take up, and a pretty heavy wall. It's not a weight I would be afraid to carry. It's not a weight I'd be afraid to train with, but it is a weight that I think people would complain about. But heavy trigger, heavy gun, we're okay. If you have heavy trigger on a light gun, you start to have issues. Let's see how it performed. .514. Gotta say the dot made that a whole lot easier. Not so much on the generic torso target, where it did well, but definitely on the bullseye. I had a definitive aiming point. The weight of this gun, because of the all-metal frame, made it easier to drive hard and go fast. Had no issues there with it. So that's probably where we have a little bit of a bias. So from what you guys saw and recall, what do you think? Which one was the winner? Which one is your favorite of these? If you'd like more details, the facts, the numbers, all that kind of stuff about all of these guns, check the pinned comment over at the website that I can't name. Guys, this YouTube censorship is really getting old. It's why we set up the website in the first place. A big part of it. I ask you, if you care to know things and know when stuff's out, sign up for the email list over on our site. I do not use it for advertising. I do not sell it. I don't do anything with it aside from publish to it. When an article publishes, you get an email letting you know there's been an update. That is our fail-safe, free from censorship, because I pay to host that site. It's not something like YouTube. Here I have to play by YouTube's rules. It's their house. So I bit the bullet. It's costing me roughly a couple grand each year between the email lists and all the other services and things like that to host that. That is why that has affiliate links on it, because when you click and purchase through there, it helps fund the site for one. It also helps fund the channel a little bit, since YouTube revenue has also been terrible. As many of you know, I have a real job. I come out here in evenings and weekends. I'm not trying to make my living off of creating media. I know some guys can pull it off. I know most guys who have pulled it off do so by shilling or pushing their people to purchase things, and I don't ever want to have to cross that line in order to pay bills. That's why I keep my day job. That's also why I have things set up like over at the website to help fund all this and keep it all going. I hope I'm providing you information that is worth you guys using a link when you buy something to help make sure that I can keep putting out information. Thanks for watching. This was a fun experiment. I can't wait to go look at the footage and look at all the data, and then cross-compare all of these things for that total article. It's going to take me a couple weeks to get it all together. Who knows when this video will actually publish, but it was a fun time. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Thanks for watching. Stay safe, and we'll see you in the next video.